starting on my 285 here. I've got all the parts for it, and I started out having 2-part saws, and trying to make one good one. And let me show you what I got going. It's all nasty and gross, but I know some chips up here, so I'm gonna file them out, and some corrosion going on down here in the crankcase. This side looks pretty decent. There's some paint chipping. I'm not too worried about that. The reason why I kept this one together was these mechanisms and stuff in here. I just wanted to have something to reference off of to get that spring and throttle lever here. I actually was able to save the crankcase gasket. I'm gonna reuse the crankshafts and reuse the bearings. They seem like they were actually in really good shape. So see if I can get this together here. Alright, so I kind of cleaned up my crank halves a little bit. Got the old paint that was chipping off. I had to, this ain't really fancy, but get this old corrosion happen. These, had to grind off the corrosion. Well, the story on these two saws were they were part saws and they were stored in a container. They were actually my father's, and they were for his, you know, he had them for parts for his 285, which is still going. And pretty much everything in this container got ruined just from moisture over like 10 years or even longer. And you can see here, these piston cylinders were actually good at one time. And when I disassembled this saw, I found that you can see the bubbles right above this port here. It started to corrode under the chrome and push out. So these cylinders are ruined. You can see at the top the chrome all peeled off. I bought a used 285 piston cylinder for this. Also, what I got going on here is this is the old crankshaft. The bearing stayed on the flywheel side, so I've been tapping it in with a brass punch, kind of here, here, and then getting it turned in this way and on the back. You just got to be careful you don't get the crankshaft stuck over here. It needs to stay right in the center. And then what I'm going to do is this side doesn't have a catch on it, which is kind of weird for the bearing. So I'll probably install the bearing on the crankshaft, and then I'll try to bolt the crank halves together. So I'll show you how it goes. Alright, so I got the crankshaft on almost all the way down, and I put the bearing on the crankshaft first. And I just got a couple threads started. I've been kind of going around in a star pattern, slowly tightening this down. I got my my little gasket here, and I've got made sure I got my little throttle shaft going here. The spring has to go around this little notch here, make sure it's on that, and then the spring rides up just kind of on the crankcase half, and you just got to make sure that spring doesn't get caught in there. So I'm going to keep tightening down. Alright, so I've got it together here. I went real slow, got it all tightened down, and this is a problem I've seen, and I don't think too many people on the internet kind of show you, but you know, you want this crank to be, I mean, I'm putting like no pressure on it and it's swinging right around. Well, it wasn't like that. And I've got this little tip here from my uncle who's a small engine mechanic, and he said to pretty much take your your center punch, and just so happens there's a nice hole on both sides. Give that a couple raps on both sides with a hammer. They don't need to be super heavy, but just some vibration, and it'll eventually loosen up. I mean, it was so stiff I couldn't even move it, and so that works. Also on this one, I took my my socket I had here and I put it on top, and then I gave that a couple good whacks on the bearing race, the inner one, and then that really loosened it up nice. The other thing I noticed, now I don't know if that is seated all the way on this side. There is a lip or a shoulder that bearing will hit. And so there's a gap on here, and it looks like the bearing's sticking out. And over here, there's almost no clearance. And there's no shoulder on this bearing housing there. But if you look at this one that's never been touched, it's the same. There's almost no clearance on that side and a lot on that side. Now, I don't know if that's just to give it some wiggle room with the, you know, the way these are made production, but I'm probably going to call that good. Now, this side, you would think that there's not enough room for a seal, but the seal is housed in the oil pump, which is kind of weird, but that's just the way it is. And on this side, there's plenty of surface for that seal to ride on. So, and that seal obviously stays on this case. So I've got the bottom end kind of tidied up here. I'll probably tighten up my bolts a couple more times, make sure that this is nice and loose still, and then I'll start going ahead, probably put the top end on. Just wanted to show you the jug I've got. This is a used jug I picked up off eBay. It's in pretty good condition. You know, it's a little dirty. Came with the gaskets, which was kind of cool. But I got to clean up the head a little bit, and I think I'm going to run some Scotch-Brite in there to kind of give some crosshatching. The intake side's a little wore, but it hasn't gone through the chrome, so it's still in good shape. This is the old piston. I think it's in pretty good shape. I've got new rings for it. And one thing you got to know about reusing jugs and all that, and I think this goes for other saws, but I've got this little chainsaw manual here. Old thing I got for free from a guy. And in this, anyways, it goes for all the Huskies. There's a letter on the top of the jug and the piston. All right, now there's A through E, graded in size. They're all 52 millimeters, but they're not all perfect. So I forgot where it says A would be the smallest jug, and E would be the largest cylinder piston. So you can't really, if an A is the smallest, I've got a B. All right, A would be the smallest, E would be the largest. So you can't put an E piston in an A jug, but you can put an A piston in an E jug. That wouldn't be the best fitment. You'd want to try to get a B with a B, A with an A. I've seen some that say AB on the pistons as well, so they can probably go for both. So you just want to get that right. That's got a B on it. This one's also, I believe, a B. Well, it did come out of that jug. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and clean this. You got to assemble your intake block before you put it on the saw. So I'll also do that. Put my new rings and we'll see, get her going here. All right, so this is the 285 jug here, 52 millimeter, and I started to do some port work to it, and I'm not going to get too fancy. Pretty much all I'm doing is enlarging the bottoms of the transfers, so the transfer openings. I'm not messing with the top. And I'm trying to get you some lighting here. This is what I have done. Now, here's the other side. You can see how small that is. And what I do, just you can take the piston. Look how big that opening is. Look how small that is. All right. So pretty much without even timing this, I mean, I'm not going for perfection right here, but you can take your piston and try to get it in there where the you run perpendicular with that wrist pin. Stick it in the jug. I just take my finger, this is the exhaust port, and run that piston up till it touches my finger. And that's as far as I really need to go with that, because if anything, the piston comes up a little more. See how much you can take out from those windows for those lower transfer openings? Alright, you just take some permanent marker and pretty much just run it on the cylinder like I did here. Stick the piston in there and use like a little scribe and just mark where you want to port. If anything, I probably made it actually a little too big. But I'm just kind of making a straight ramp up. I don't think, but you don't want, you know, kind of don't want any humps. You just want to keep it straight. That's usually the best bet. And I've got plenty of material on this jug here. So I wasn't really worried about cutting into anything, cutting through the cylinder. All right there. So I pretty much done with the porting on this saw, or this cylinder. This is the 285. And I've opened up the bottoms of the transfers quite significantly. I didn't do too much down in there. You can kind of see where I stopped. I wanted it to kind of swoop in and aim towards the back, and I wanted to kind of enhance that. I did no intake mod and no exhaust mod. The only thing I did here was I took a block of wood that had planed and I resurfaced that so I got a better gasket seal. And I didn't do any modifications to the top of the transfers, and I pretty much cleaned up the cylinder. And I tried to do a hone job on it with like a brake cylinder hone, just to kind of, I'm just trying some things. And it doesn't really work well because these openings are so huge that these pieces here will catch. They'll pretty much fall in that hole, so it doesn't really work well with that. And maybe that's why they left these transfers so small. So there it is. I got some cross hatching in here. You can kind of see it's nothing significant. It's better than what was there. Okay, so the other mod I did here was, and I think I've already made the video on this, but I opened up the holes on the pistons on the intake side. I did not do the exhaust side. That's just something I just kind of want to try for myself. I think it's going to help promote the air curving up in the right way. So yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. And when you're trying to port these, you know, not going too far is kind of the safe way of doing it. And you never know when you try stuff. So I'm going to assemble this, and that's what I'm going to do. So that's going to conclude the part one on this 285 rebuild. This video is not really meant to be a detailed, complete chainsaw rebuild on the saw. If there's anything you do want to see about 285, questions like, I don't know, oil pump seals or yada yada, leave a comment. I'll be more than happy to try to make a video or be a little more detailed about it. I just want to cover the big things like the ignition system, which is going to come up in the next video, and the port work I did, and you'll see the saw running, how it does. I'm going to see if I can get another 285 and run it kind of head to head with this one and see how much of a difference opening up those transfers did. And so thanks for watching, if you made it this far, and stay tuned for the next video. Take it easy.